I have no intention of taking Joe in. Just put him in some facility or something. Emma, the ex-wife of my recently deceased husband, screamed this to the surrounding relatives, as I still couldn't grasp the reality of losing my husband to a heart attack. We had been married for just a month. The marriage that ended too soon left me with Joe, my husband's child from a previous relationship. Despite his biological mother's rare appearance, Joe never once looked up, remaining hunched over in his seat at the funeral home. Everyone seemed to show sympathy for Joe from a distance, but their attitudes shifted upon witnessing Emma's behavior. It's inevitable, being the child of such a mother, that the child's blood is no good either. Eventually, Mike's relatives started making selfish remarks. Who's going to take Joe in? Your place, maybe? We definitely can't. I slowly stood up and rushed to Joe's side, looking into his face. Are you okay? Want to go to another room? Hey, you don't need to care for me. I can just go to a facility or something. Feeling a tightness in my chest, before I could even think, I was hugging Joe. I could feel the cold stares of those around us. Then someone audibly remarked, which stirred my emotions. Raising a dead husband's child is insane. Stepping away from Joe, I clenched his hand and shouted at the relatives watching from a distance. No matter what anyone says, I will raise this child properly. My emphatic declaration was met with skepticism by everyone at the funeral home. Then, a petite man sitting in the funeral home chairs coughed softly before walking up to me and looked into my eyes. It was Tom, my dad, whom I hadn't seen in a long time. Are you saying you'll raise that child all by yourself? Yes. I will make Mike's child something to be proud of. Don't be ridiculous. Dad suddenly pulled Joe's arm towards him and stormed out of the funeral home. My name is Nancy. I lived with a man I met in college, thinking we would marry someday. On an ordinary day, not a special anniversary, he gave me something somewhat like a proposal. It wasn't particularly romantic, but I fondly remember the small, cute flower he gave me at that time. It was a small, star-shaped white flower that grew in a corner of a nearby parking lot. It was a star lily. I didn't rush into marriage immediately after the proposal, but after some time, I decided to go to the gynecologist alone. It was because when I told a friend I might marry my boyfriend, she had asked, "Aren't you going to get checked?" While I was sitting in the gynecologist's clean waiting room, I overheard a conversation. It was between a daughter in her 20s and her mother, discussing the daughter's upcoming marriage next month. I didn't intend to eavesdrop, but the mother spoke loudly, mentioning her daughter was there for a bridal check. Receiving my boyfriend's proposal, I came here with the same thought, feeling a bit scared and shaky. What if the examination today reveals some disease? How should I explain it to him? I wanted to ask the chatting mother and daughter sitting next to me. Hey, if you found a disease, would you still marry your loved one? The warm sunlight through the window brightened the waiting room. As the parent and child who finished their consultation earlier left with smiles, it was my turn for the examination. When I left the hospital after the examination, the previously sunny sky had turned overcast, looking like it might rain at any moment. Weeks later, the examination results revealed that my body has difficulty conceiving children. Eventually, I broke up with that boyfriend. I didn't explain the reason to him. Or should I say, I didn't want to. I didn't want his sympathy, nor had I ever really wanted children. Avoiding the gaze of children in passing families, I had to tell myself I didn't like kids, or else I felt like I would sink into despair. Years later, I met Mike, a man from a business deal, and I fell for him. Despite deciding never to fall in love again, I found myself drawn to Mike's lonely expression. I asked Mike out. Sitting by the window of a cafe near my workplace, we might have been trying to figure each other out. Then, as if making up his mind, Mike straightened up and began to speak. I'm actually divorced. I have a son and we live together. I see. That's okay with me. And besides, I have difficulty conceiving. What? so I want to raise your child as my own. At this point, I had never met Mike's son. But I was determined to cherish him if he was my own. Mike smiled sadly for a moment before whispering in a soft, thin voice, "Thank you." And that's how our relationship began. Emma, Mike's ex-wife, apparently abandoned her household and childcare duties and left the home. It's unclear if that was the direct cause, but Joe, their son, must have felt lonely. Despite being only 10 years old, he would hang out with older friends near the station late into the night. Mike's job kept him busy, often returning home late, leaving little time to connect with Joe. Soon after we started dating, I asked for an opportunity to meet Joe, and sincerely told him that I was seriously considering marriage with Mike. I then decided to visit their home daily, preparing meals and spending time with Joe. I cooked kid-friendly dishes like pizza, chicken nuggets, and pasta, making sure he ate plenty. Initially hesitant, Joe began to open up and show his genuine, childlike side. "Joe, do you like tonight's dinner?" "Yeah, it's delicious." I wanted to stop Joe from wandering out at night, so I would finish my work early and always come by in the evening to cook. That alone made Mike deeply grateful, and a year into our relationship, we decided to get married. Legally becoming Joe's parent filled me with happiness. We didn't report our marriage to my parents. Mike's parents had already passed away. It wasn't that I had a bad relationship with my parents or any special circumstances, I just hadn't seen them for many years. I was raised by my father after losing my mother at a young age. "I'd like to meet Grandpa someday," Joe said, so smiling, and to that, with little hesitation, I nodded. After getting married, I tried harder than ever to cook for Joe and do as much motherly things as possible. But I had no motherly role model. My father was always busy with work, and I don't have many memories of being doted on. Young women, who seemed to be employees at my father's glass factory, would come to keep me company and cook for me in turns. The sound of glass clinking, echoing from the nearby factory until night, still lingers in my ears. When I went to see my father at the factory wanting to see him, I was scolded severely. So, I hid in the shadows and watched him from a distance. From afar, I watched my father staring at the molten glass in the dark factory. There was a very small flower bed in the corner of the factory, where white star-shaped flowers bloomed. I remember vividly picking one of those white flowers and waiting at home alone. As I waited for Mike's return, confirming Joe had fallen asleep, the thought of my father suddenly crossed my mind. I should visit my father. I want to introduce Mike and Joe to him. I was curious about his reaction. As I was about to look up my father's contact on my mobile phone, an unknown number called. I answered the phone. It was cold. The voice of a woman I didn't know, the content, the air, everything felt cold. It was the news that Mike had suddenly collapsed at work and was taken to the hospital by ambulance. I wanted to rush there, but hesitated because Joe was sleeping. And that hesitation is something I would regret for the rest of my life. An hour after being taken to the hospital, I was informed that Mike had passed away. The doctor later explained it seemed to be a heart attack. The cause of death didn't matter to me. What I wanted to know was not why Mike died, but how Joe and I were supposed to live without him. I didn't cry even after Mike died. It was too sudden, and it didn't feel real. Without much thought, I blandly discussed funeral arrangements with the funeral home the hospital referred, and the proceedings went on mechanically. Joe, like me, probably couldn't grasp the reality. Sitting in the funeral home chair with the same expression as always, I looked boredly at the floor. A flamboyantly dressed woman appeared, and Mike's relatives started to argue with her after she approached them. I couldn't hear the conversation clearly, but she was Emma, Mike's divorced ex-wife, seemingly pressing about an inheritance or the lack thereof. Desperately, the relatives explained. "There's nothing like that." Amidst this, it felt like someone had asked what would become of Joe. Emma yelling caused quite a scene at the funeral. "I have no intention of taking Joe in. Just put him in some facility or something. Can't you see he's the one who's hurt the most? Can you not speak so thoughtlessly?" Oh, are you Mike's new wife? I heard about you. He died shortly after getting remarried, right? What are you going to do in this situation? You have no connection to Joe at all. You can't possibly feel a bond after just 1 month of being a parent and child, can you? As I continued to glare silently, Emma shrugged and smirked. You seem young. You'd better make a choice you won't regret. With those parting words, she left the funeral home. Despite his real mother making an appearance for the first time in a while, Joe never once looked up. Everyone seemed to show sympathy for Joe, but their attitudes changed after witnessing the ex-wife's behavior. It's clear, being the child of such a mother, that child is beyond help too. Whispers began circulating that it's impossible to fight blood and how there's no obligation to raise a child not related by blood. Eventually, Mike's relatives started making selfish remarks. Who's going to take Joe in? Your place, maybe? We definitely can't. Are you okay? Want to go to another room? Hey, you don't need to care for me. I can just go to a facility or something. Feeling a tightness in my chest, before I could even think, I was hugging Joe. I could feel the cold stares from those around us. Someone said loud enough for me to hear. Raising a dead husband's child, are you out of your mind? That's when my emotions surged. Stepping away from Joe, I clenched his hand and shouted at the relatives watching from a distance. No matter what anyone says, I will raise this child properly. Calm down a bit. You have no obligation to do this. Honestly, it would be better for your future to just put him in a facility. Shut up. Even if I'm alone, I'll make sure to raise him right. My defiant declaration was met with skepticism by everyone at the funeral home. What would become of Joe's life if I also disappeared from his side now that Mike was gone? I won't let him be lonely like I was as a child. I refuse to let that happen. Then, a petite man sitting in the funeral home chairs coughed softly before walking up to me and looked intently into my eyes. It was Tom, my dad, whom I hadn't seen in a long time. Are you saying you'll raise that child by yourself? Yes. I will make something of Mike's child. Don't joke. You have no idea how hard that's going to be. Dad suddenly pulled Joe's arm towards him and stormed out of the funeral home. Ignoring the other relatives' stunned reactions, we faced each other in the parking lot just outside. I followed and tried to pull Joe away from my father, but was pushed back with a strength that belied his small stature. Your name's Joe, right? I'm your grandfather. What? Yeah. How about it? You'd have to move, but would you come live with me? There's a factory near my house where I work. It's a bit noisy. As Joe struggled to respond to the sudden invitation, Dad turned to me with a sad look and said, Nancy, come home. He suggested it would be sad and difficult for a child to be raised by just a woman, and that I should come back to my family home. After the funeral, the relatives stopped bothering me with unnecessary comments. It was as if they no longer wanted to be involved with Joe and I. I had been determined to raise Joe on my own, but it was just bravado. I was actually scared, anxious, and wanted to disappear. Joe hadn't cried since Mike passed away. And I hadn't yet felt the reality of his death, nor had I felt truly sad. But when Dad reached out to me with a look of concern, something inside me broke free, and I found myself crying in my dad's arms like a child. Are you okay? I felt Joe watching me as I continued to cry. After that, Joe and I vacated our apartment and left home. Dad came to pick us up, and we headed to my childhood home in his car. The scenery passing by the car window seemed melancholic, making me feel as if the memories I had with Mike were drifting further away. Upon returning home, a new life for Joe and I began. From his first day at the new school, something was off about Joe. I casually encouraged him, saying it's not easy to make friends right away, and sent him off to school as usual the next day. I started helping out at the glass factory my father ran. Inside the factory, a few male craftsmen were blowing glass to make dishes. My job was to inspect the finished glass products. picking up each item one by one and wiping it down with a cloth. I felt deeply moved, now as an adult doing the very work I was scolded for watching from a distance as a child because it was dangerous. Among the employees, there was a veteran lady who used to take care of me, and she happily remarked how the once little Nancy was all grown up. Though Dad no longer manufactures glass as an active craftsman, he was chatting with what seemed like a salesperson at a small desk near the workshop. I occasionally watched the glass blowing process from the corner of my eye while doing my job. The sight of the molten glass glowing orange in the furnace, being gathered on the end of a long rod and blown into a balloon-like shape, was nothing short of magnificent. I felt a slight desire to try it myself. But there was no atmosphere for beginners to experience glass blowing in this factory. The craftsmen worked silently, fluidly forming glass. Realizing that my father was the one leading these skilled craftsmen filled me with a bit of pride. At that time, I believe I was doing my best to adapt to this unfamiliar new life. And Joe probably was too. At a school PTA meeting, a nosy parent told me about Joe's situation at school. It seemed that the fact Joe and I were not blood related had already become a neighborhood rumor, and many students at his school were talking behind his back. Hearing this left me with a heavy heart as I started to walk, filled with various thoughts. I had been completely unaware of this, unable to even imagine it. It was something I should have considered, yet it had never crossed my mind. Mostly, I was overrun with regrets, excuses, a desire to escape, and the strong wish that Mike was still here with me. Returning home, I walked down the hallway and knocked on Joe's room door. "Joe, can I come in?" "Don't open it." Joe's somewhat hoarse voice came through. After taking a breath, I quietly said, "I'm sorry." "Joe, if you're okay with it, could you tell me about what's happening at school?" Joe didn't respond. I stood in front of the door for a while before eventually giving up and starting to prepare dinner. Day by day, conversations with Joe dwindled. Perhaps he sensed my forced smiles as I tried to inquire about school. He stopped sharing anything about his daily life. Eventually, Joe stopped going to school and began shutting himself in his room, living like a recluse. Though he was supposed to be at school in the mornings, it seemed he returned home after I left for work. Even at work, where I needed to concentrate, I found myself thinking about Joe, leading to mistakes like dropping freshly made glassware and getting scolded. Dad noticed my distress and offered to talk with me. However, I felt unable to share my troubles with my father, who had left me to focus on his work during my childhood. Yet, Dad kept calling me after work. "Talk to me if something's wrong," he would repeatedly say. Despite his insistence, I couldn't bring myself to confide in Dad. Each time he said to talk to him if something happened, it felt as though he was reminding me to protect Joe, leading me to ponder every night until I came up with an idea. One morning, I quietly handed Joe a mobile phone while he was eating breakfast. Seeing his suddenly brightened expression, I smiled a little. "I bought a mobile phone, matching with mine. If it's hard to talk about school stuff, you can text me. I might be able to help." "Okay." Joe carefully cradled the new mobile phone placed on the table with both hands. For a while, there was no contact from Joe. Considering I hadn't had time to teach him how to use the mobile phone, it seemed natural, until one day, I suddenly received a message. It was written that he had learned how to use the mobile phone from a kind employee at the glass factory, so he decided to send a message. Gradually, though sparingly, he began to share things about school through messages. As a mother, I wanted to do everything I could, but even after hearing about his school life, there wasn't much I could do to help, except to send encouraging words through messages. Still, I wondered if that had made Joe happy. After getting the mobile phone, he started going to school regularly and began to lead a normal school life. Even as a middle schooler, he went to school diligently without causing any major problems, and eventually became a high school student. By this time, Joe had stopped needing to communicate through messages and would talk to me face to face about his day at school, impressing me with his candidness. One holiday, Dad took Joe for a tour inside the glass factory. It was near the high-temperature furnace used for forming glass, an area I had been constantly warned as a child to stay away from because it was dangerous. Watching Joe being carefully taught and experiencing making a basic glass cup filled me with immense joy. From that day on, Dad spent his weekends and days off teaching Joe how to make glass. Dad's glasswork was artistic. It gave a special sensation, almost as if holding the drink directly. Time passed and Joe was in his junior year in high school. He wasn't interested in going to college, nor was he enthusiastic about getting a job, struggling to decide on a career path. The pressure from teachers and the inability to choose a post-graduation path until winter might have been partly my fault as his parent. During weekends, while I was busy with paperwork in a corner of the factory, Joe and Dad would take breaks together, sitting and staring at the heated glass furnace. Does it make sense to do manual work in an era when most factories are transitioning to machines for glass production? Joe asked Dad out of curiosity, to which Dad responded with a thoughtful look, crossing his arms. During his adolescence, it's unclear how Joe viewed Dad as a craftsman, but Dad seemed to ponder deeply over Joe's words. People say our job is a dying industry. But we're still making a living out of it, which means there's value in it. There are people who appreciate the glass I make. Aren't you scared of going bankrupt? I'm terrified, to be honest. Bankruptcy is scary. I brought over cups of coffee to them, using the glass cups Joe had made as practice. Dad looked at Joe's glass and sipped his coffee, showing a hint of sadness. When machines started taking over the glass industry, I was young. Nancy was little, and I didn't have time to play with her. Every day was filled with fear and no room for relaxation. I was desperate not to lose my mind from all the work. I wonder if Mom was lonely too. Probably. I hardly took care of Nancy. The thought that she had only me, her only family, scared me to death. Dad looked around the factory. I lost my wife shortly after starting this company. But I didn't have the luxury to mourn. I needed money to raise Nancy. I had to keep the company going to support my employees. I was desperate not to make my beloved daughter sad. Dad. Pathetic, right? I was just a man who could only think of himself. Hesitantly, I reached out and touched Dad's hand. His hands were thin but large with long fingers. Hands that had crafted countless glasses. I knelt before Dad, eventually wrapping both hands around his. Something resonated within me, as if something was speaking to my heart. Thank you, Dad, for raising me. Didn't you listen? I didn't do anything. I was just desperately afraid of becoming hopeless. No, I knew you were. I knew Dad was working hard for me. I used to watch my father work hard from outside the factory, always finding ways to pass the time at the factory entrance. The handmade flower bed that changed with the seasons had been planted by someone. Then one day, when I was still young, one of my employees taught me who had been making these flower beds. I was told it was Dad who planted them. There was no way Dad could be interested in flowers. Surely, it was planted for me, thinking all girls like flowers. Now, no more flowers were planted there. When the star lilies that had sprouted from seeds carried by the wind bloomed around the factory, Joe graduated high school and started working at Dad's glass factory. Dad, who had been focusing more on paperwork, began working with glass again. The intricate glass works he created was purely magnificent, and both Joe and I respected him for it. As time passed, Joe married a woman introduced by Dad and built a duplex house, insisting we live together despite my initial refusal. Dad was also invited to live with us, but he refused. I can't sleep unless I'm near the workshop. Eventually, when my grandchild was born and Joe was busy with work, I took care of the baby. Walking with the baby, I pointed out Joe working in the factory. Look, there's Dad. I tilt my grandson's face slightly to look at Joe. Without saying a word, the baby suddenly pointed at a small star lily at our feet. The delicate star-shaped flowers scattered around the factory, and as I set the baby down, it happily played with the flowers.
What are you doing? That's dangerous.
Joe came out of the factory, scolding yet looking at his child with joy. I hope to protect this small life that lies beyond this smile forever. If you're going to have your ovaries removed, you're not planning to bury a child, right? Since you're no longer needed, can you divorce me? My husband Michael confronted me with divorce papers. What are you talking about? I won't forgive you if this is a joke, in such a situation. Just a few days ago, I was rushed to the hospital with sudden abdominal pain. The diagnosis suggested the possibility of ovarian cancer. And I was admitted for surgery the following day. This is no joke. I've been putting up with this until now. No, the real endurance had been mine. Living with the in-laws and their harassment. Why should I be the one presented with a divorce petition? On the day before my surgery. Anger, sadness, despair, a mix of emotions overwhelmed me as I covered my face. Then, to add insult to injury, I heard the voices of the in-laws, Kevin and Stella.
A barren woman should quietly step aside. It's shameful for a woman of your age to cling to a younger husband. These 3 years have been a waste of time for Michael. Please disappear from our lives quickly. Their words cut deep into my heart. Fighting back tears, I managed to steady my trembling right hand with my left and furiously signed my name.
All right, this makes us complete strangers. With that, Michael pocketed the divorce papers. As he was leaving, Michael said,
Actually, there's a nice girl at work lately. She's young, cute, and healthy. Ah, it was right not to take the ugly genes from an old hag.
I was speechless at his cruel words. Little did I know, meeting Michael again 3 years later would turn out to be quite unexpected. My name is Ava. I married Michael, who is 2 years younger, 2 years ago. We met at work when I was 38, and after his persistent pursuit, we got married. Having given up on marriage, I initially refused his advances.
There are plenty of younger women out there. I like someone independent and calm like Ava. I might not be able to have children at 38. I don't want children, I want to be with you, Ava.
Despite my objections, Michael insisted I was the only one for him, and I set just one condition for our marriage. Just promise me one thing. I'm not obsessed with having children due to my age. Let's not force ourselves to have children. Michael agreed to this condition, and we got married. Michael, who had always lived with his parents, insisted on continuing to do so after our marriage.
I'm an only child, and I'll have to take care of my parents eventually. Why not live with my parents from the start?
Though living with strangers at this age was daunting, I consented to live with his parents, Kevin and Stella, out of gratitude for marrying a leftover like me. However, I quickly realized this decision was a mistake.
Ava will need you to do the shopping, cooking, dishwashing, garbage disposal, and bathroom cleaning.
Why was I the only one expected to do so much when there were 4 adults living in the house? I felt uneasy from the start but couldn't voice my concerns. They seemed to think of me as a housekeeper.
Ava, I want to eat Odin today.
Ava, the entrance is getting dirty, please clean it.
Ava, iron my shirts.
What kind of life had the 3 of them been leading before I arrived? The in-laws' house wasn't dirty, so someone must have been doing the housework until I came. This realization only added to my frustration. Furthermore, the in-laws were overjoyed at the prospect of their only son getting married and expected a grandchild right away. You're nearly 40, you should start infertility treatments soon. No, we're fine without children.
What are you saying? There's no point in marrying if you're not going to have children.
The in-laws couldn't understand our choice not to have children.
Well, we're not young anymore. so we decided not to be too nervous about having children,"
Michael said, trying to convince his parents at first. But the in-laws were persistent. No matter how much Michael tried to persuade them, the question of when we were going to have a grandchild would resurface after a few days. One day, Michael came into the room, red-faced.
"Mom said I should get checked at the hospital because it might be my fault you're not getting pregnant."
Feeling wounded in his male pride, Michael started taking it out on me. "It's not my fault, is it? Michael is just hurting himself." Of course, I didn't say it out loud, but my dissatisfaction grew day by day.
"We're proving it's your fault we can't have kids. We're going to the doctor."
Eventually, Michael said something like that. However, I had no intention of undergoing fertility treatments, so naturally, I ignored what he said and lied about being too busy with work to escape from my in-laws' house. "I'm home. Listen, Mom." The only saving grace was that my parents' house was near my office. Before going home, I'd stop by my parents' house to vent my frustrations. There, my loving parents, Thomas and Olivia, who had already retired and were enjoying their later years, were waiting for me. I wonder how they felt about their daughter, who got married close to 40, exploding with complaints about her in-laws and husband so soon after getting married. At first, I felt sorry for my parents, but they listened to my complaints as if they were a snack to accompany their drinks.
"Ava, what's wrong today? We got some nice liquor from the neighbor, let's drink together."
Perhaps it was because my parents took it so lightly that I was able to complain. Why does everyone think marriage equals children? Plus, pregnancy and childbirth are all tough on women. And then to have the husband's parents complain.
People are just set in their ways, especially as they get older. I'm told I've softened with age.
Dad has mellowed with age, hasn't he? Maybe Michael will turn out like Dad? With time, this situation will probably become a laughing matter. Just like this, my parents always encouraged me. Having my parents on my side always gave me strength, and I was somehow able to continue my marriage. Then one day, on my way home from work, I suddenly felt severe pain in my lower abdomen. "What's this pain?" Cold sweat broke out due to the pain, and I couldn't stand, sitting down on the sidewalk. I tried to search for my mobile phone to call for help, but my hands were shaking so much from the pain that I couldn't properly search for it. Fortunately, a passerby noticed and called an ambulance for me. At the hospital, after various tests, I was told there was a possibility of ovarian cancer.
"Could you contact your family immediately?"
Asked by the nurse, I called Michael. It was past 7 p.m., and Michael should have been home, but he didn't answer the phone no matter how many times I tried. Reluctantly, I called Mom.
"I'll be there right away. You'll be okay, Ava."
Mom encouraged me and soon arrived at the hospital with Dad. Tears streamed down my face the moment I saw my parents. I wasn't strong enough to face cancer alone after turning 40. Mom gently stroked my back. With my parents, I listened to the doctor about my condition. The right ovary is highly likely to be cancerous. We recommend the removal of both ovaries and the uterus.
"Does that mean I won't be able to get pregnant?"
Yes. Are you hoping to get pregnant, Ava? I hesitated. Honestly, at 41, I wasn't that desperate to have children. But, given the pressure for children from the in-laws and Michael, I felt a moment of resistance to making my body unable to bear children.
"Is there another treatment option if I wanted to get pregnant?"
I asked timidly. You have to think about your body first. My parents looked worried. The doctor quietly said to me, "There are options, but further tests are needed to see if they're applicable to Ava." My parents were probably surprised I was still concerned about getting pregnant. I was surprised myself. I couldn't quite express my feelings, but the thought of having both of my ovaries and my uterus removed without ever having had children made me feel indescribably empty. Maybe if I don't give up and keep trying, Michael, Kevin, Stella might change their minds about me. That thought crossed my mind. I can't completely give up on getting pregnant. Can you leave one ovary? The doctor looked into my eyes and nodded. I understand how you feel, Ava. However, depending on the progress, there might still be a need to remove everything. As a result of the discussion with the doctor, surgery to remove my right ovary, the site of the tumor, was scheduled for 5 days later. If the tumor was confined to the right ovary, we would see how it goes with the addition of chemotherapy.
If there's any spread, you must give up on pregnancy for good,
the doctor emphasized, and I nodded firmly. Thankfully, my parents quietly supported me without saying anything about my decision. Mom came to the hospital every day, taking care of me when I was feeling down. Did Michael get in touch? No.
He doesn't answer the phone, and he hasn't responded to my messages about being hospitalized. I don't understand what's going on with Michael.
My parents were silent, seemingly not having realized how much their daughter's marriage had deteriorated.
Maybe he's just busy. Dad and Mom have plenty of time, so don't worry about things like laundry. Oh, I'll buy your favorite pears later.
Mom tried to keep my spirits up by being cheerfully supportive. I was deeply moved by my parents' warmth. I decided to do my best in the surgery for my parents as well. Just then, Michael and the in-laws entered my hospital room. It was the day before the surgery. I glared at the three of them.
Why are you ignoring my calls and messages?
Michael casually responded. Seems like you've been through a lot. Good job. Expecting him to apologize for not contacting me, I was speechless. Why can he speak so indifferently about his wife undergoing surgery? Anger welled up inside me, and I glared at them even more. Seeing my reaction, the three of them exchanged some words, then looked at me with a disdainful smile.
Leave! I don't want to see your faces!
Unable to hold back, I yelled at them, forgetting we were in a hospital. Then Michael walked up to me and thrust a piece of paper at me.
If you're going to have your ovaries removed, you can't have kids, right? Since you're useless to me now, will you divorce me?
The paper Michael thrust at me was a divorce petition.
What are you talking about? I won't forgive you for joking about this in such a situation.
It's no joke.
I've been putting up with this until now.
No, I've been the one putting up with everything. Why should I be the one presented with a divorce petition? On the day before my surgery, anger, sadness, despair, a mix of emotions overwhelmed me as I covered my face. Then, to add insult to injury, the in-laws spoke up.
A barren woman should quietly step aside. It's shameful for a woman of your age to cling to a younger husband. These 3 years have been a waste of Michael's time. Please disappear from our sight quickly.
Their words cut deep into my heart. Choosing a treatment that left open the possibility of pregnancy for their sake now seemed foolish. What is this treatment? Stunned, Michael left the divorce petition and a pen on the bedside table.
Just sign your name, and it's all done. Be thankful I'm handling this for you.
Saying so, Michael forced a pen into my right hand. I wasn't opposed to divorcing per se. In fact, I couldn't bear the thought of living with the in-laws and enduring their snide remarks until we had a child. But I had endured their tyranny for these 3 years. I endured it because they were family. They must have seen me only as a childbearing machine. The resentment towards the three who didn't offer support but instead presented me with divorce while I was facing surgery was immense. I bit my lip, holding back tears, and with trembling hands supported by my left, I wrote my name.
All right, this makes us complete strangers.
With that, Michael pocketed the divorce petition. The three of them left the room with satisfied looks. At the last moment, Michael turned back and said,
"Actually, there's a nice young girl at work. She's young, cute, and healthy. She doesn't have a single thing in common with you." Ah, I was right not to inherit ugly genes from an old hag.
Glaring at Michael, he said,
"Good thing I divorced the old hag."
and left with a smirk. The only sound in the quiet room was my sniffles. Michael and his family had pushed me, already overwhelmed by illness and fear, further down into despair. I buried my face in the blanket and cried. After some time, there was a knock at the door. I hurriedly covered my face with the blanket and pretended to be asleep.
"Ava, you're sleeping, huh?
I peeled some pears for you, eat them later." The voice belonged to Mom, who always entered without knocking. She quietly came in and placed a container of pears on the table.
"I'll move all your stuff to our house today. After you're discharged, maybe you can help with the laundry. Oh, and Dad has started cooking. Look forward to Dad's cooking. I'll come back tomorrow morning."
As Mom gently stroked the top of my head peeking out from the blanket, she quickly left the hospital room. It seemed like she knew everything without needing to say a word. Perhaps she had overheard the divorce conversation with Michael and the others outside the room. Feeling the infinite kindness and warmth of Mom, I found myself tearing up again. After a good cry, I lifted my face. The pear was cut into bite-sized pieces for easy eating.
"Mom, thank you."
As I bit into the pear, the smiling faces of my parents came to mind. I need to get better soon to repay Dad and Mom. I decided to work hard on my treatment, with the goal of giving my parents peace of mind. The next day, I underwent surgery to remove my right ovary. It turned out to be cancerous as feared, but fortunately, the left ovary was normal. Next, I would undergo chemotherapy to target the unseen cells. The first round of chemotherapy was tough due to the medication not agreeing with me and the strong side effects. I couldn't eat anything, and as my hair fell out, I could see myself getting thinner. But my parents were always there to encourage me.
"Yesterday, we saw the meteor shower you like. Dad found 5 shooting stars. We made wishes, so you're definitely going to get better."
Thinking about Dad, who normally wouldn't care about shooting stars, getting up in the middle of the night to watch the sky, filled me with a sense of his love and the warmth of family. Thanks to them, I was able to keep a strong resolve to fight for their sake. My hospital stay ended after 6 months, and I switched to outpatient treatment.
If nobody uses it, it just collects dust. It's good that Ava is coming back.
My parents didn't ask about the divorce. They simply brought me home as if it was the most natural thing. I couldn't return to society immediately and spent some time recuperating at home. Supported by my parents, I gradually began to recover my former self. And then, the second year after my surgery began. Before I got sick, I always lazed around on holidays, but after experiencing cancer, I made sure to live a regular, healthy life.
Ah, that was a good walk.
As I finished my usual morning walk and was about to enter the house, the mailman arrived and handed me a delivery. It was a letter with a baby's photo attached. The name on it was surprisingly Michael's. While I was fighting my illness, the man who left me had found happiness and even had the child his in-laws wished for. I wondered what he intended by letting me know this fact. Seeing the letter didn't make me feel good, but Michael was already a stranger to me. There was no need to waste my nerves on a stranger. I decided to move on. I knew my parents would be upset if they found the New Year's card. So as soon as I entered the house, I tore it up and threw it in the trash, making sure they would never know. I then managed to return to work. Since my parents' house was close to the company, I could commute without overexerting myself.
How was the healthy sandwich?
It was delicious. Thank you as always. Every day, Dad prepared a nutritionally balanced sandwich for me. This touched since this was something he had never done when I lived at home.
Dad, you're really good at cooking. Did you always know how to cook?
I whispered to Mom, who shook her head.
Dad got excited about making Ava's sandwiches. He improved his cooking skills over the last few months.
Watching Dad happily make sandwiches while humming, I could tell he was truly happy to see me well. Parents always give their children unconditional love, no matter their age. I wished I could be a parent who gives unconditional love like them. That thought made me smile. Having one ovary left didn't matter since I was still single. But I needed to stay healthy for my parents. And I promised myself to repay them one day. I have decided once again. Then, one day, Michael and the in-laws suddenly appeared in front of me. They were waiting for me to return from work in front of my parents' house.
Ava.
Michael murmured my name as they all apologized profusely without caring about the onlookers.
I was wrong. I want to start over.
What is he talking about now? Especially since Michael already had a child. I was furious with Michael for his irresponsibility and the in-laws who followed him like fish droppings, apologizing together. As I glared at them silently, Michael began to explain.
I was deceived.
According to Michael, he married the young woman from his workplace right after divorcing me. Because she was already pregnant. Knowing now that he had cheated on me while we were still married made me upset, even after all this time. Then, just like the letter said, they had a son and were supposedly living a happy life until it was discovered that Michael's current wife was having an affair with another man. Michael became suspicious when she always stepped outside to take calls and never let her mobile phone out of her sight. He decided to hire a detective, and that's when he found out. Even more shocking was that the son he believed was his turned out to be the child of his wife's lover. When confronted, his wife casually admitted to the affair and the truth about the child. Laughing, she said,
Obviously, I'd choose his genes over yours. Who would want the genes of an ugly old man like you? That sounds familiar.
I muttered, and Michael hung his head.
I really am sorry. I've only just realized how terribly we treated you.
Following Michael's lead, the in-laws also apologized. We won't say anything about the child anymore. Can't we start over? Dad and Mom are sorry, too. What convenient people they are. After everything they did, I couldn't understand how they had the nerve to appear before me so casually, and I didn't feel like talking to them. Then, alerted by the commotion at the entrance, a man and my parents came out of the house at just the right moment. Guests? What are you doing here? Mom raised her voice upon seeing Michael and the others apologizing in front of me. The man behind my parents was taken aback by Mom's reaction, but then quickly came to my side.
Please stay away from my wife.
Then, my new husband Brian stood protectively in front of me, facing Michael and the others. Michael and his party were dumbfounded.
My wife? What do you mean, Ava? This is a joke, right? Why would you think it's a joke?
I retorted, seizing the moment to fight back. Sorry, but I'm married to him now.
Thanks to you insisting on that divorce, I found someone who loves me for who I am, not as a childbearing machine.
I wrapped my arm around the man beside me to show him off to Michael and the others. He was a colleague from work who had taken on my responsibilities while I was off sick. After returning to work, he helped me manage my workload so I wouldn't overdo it, and gradually, we spent more and more time together.
Being with Ava makes me realize the small joys in life. Will you marry me?
He proposed, accepting me for who I am, and we got married 6 months ago.
Wait, your stomach! Are you pregnant?
At that moment, Michael's mother screamed upon noticing my noticeably larger abdomen. Michael looked at my stomach and frowned deeply at me.
You said you were getting your ovaries removed. Did you lie to me? How low can you get, lying like that? Enjoy playing the victim?
The in-laws joined in, berating me just like before.
Weren't you the ones who demanded a divorce without listening to my side? You wanted children so much, I decided to keep one ovary just in case there was a chance of pregnancy, but you never listened, did you?
Anger from the past surged within me. Feeling my rage, he stroked my back to calm me down.
My wife has endured harsh chemotherapy and is still fighting hard with the remaining ovary. Please, never come near my precious wife again. If you break this promise, we will take legal action.
His firm stance left them with nothing to say, and they backed off.
We thought we'd do you a favor by offering to keep you as a housekeeper since you're alone. Well, suffer through your high-risk pregnancy then.
Michael left with a parting shot, retreating with the in-laws. My parents rushed over to me. Ava, are you all right?
I swear. If they show up again, they won't get off so easily.
My parents, who had seen me through the tough times, were filled with anger. I will always protect you, so please don't worry. His strong words finally eased me and my parents. Later, Mom heard that Michael had also made his new wife live with the in-laws, just like me. I had thought that Michael and his family were completely deceived by his new wife, but it turns out that wasn't entirely the case. They had disregarded me because I couldn't get pregnant, or so they believed. So, I imagined Michael must have been very kind to his pregnant new wife, but it seems that wasn't the case at all. They didn't take care of her despite her pregnancy, making her do household chores and carry heavy things without concern. Some neighbors, seeing her buying groceries for a family of 4 with her large belly, were so worried they helped carry her bags. Of course, the woman who cheated with Michael and bore the child of her affair was also at fault. But no one could make her feel guilty given how much Michael and his parents exploited her. Michael and his parents made their marriage partners live with them as housekeepers twice, only to divorce them shortly after. This bad reputation spread in the neighborhood, and nobody wanted to associate with Michael's family anymore. Still, they continued looking for a wife to take care of them, but as soon as Michael brought a woman home, neighbors would warn her about their reputation. Thanks to this, no woman became their victim again, and the 3 of them now live a meager life under the strange gazes of the neighborhood.
Was their house always full of trash before Ava married in?
No, they kept it fairly clean. I guess without a wife, Stella must manage the household well.
I see.
Mom nodded, understanding. Lately, Stella hasn't been well, probably due to her age. While Michael works, he has to take care of Stella, but with just the 2 men, the house has recently become neglected.
They only have themselves to blame. They have to figure it out as a family of 3, blood-related.
They need to deeply reflect on how they've mistreated their marriage partners.
Mom, I'm home.
Just then, my daughter and husband returned.
Welcome back, we've been waiting. Let's play with Grandma.
Seeing Mom, my daughter rushed into her arms with the brightest smile. My daughter turned 2 this year. When she was born, my husband and parents cried and thanked me. There were times I doubted why I chose to keep one ovary for treatment, feeling guilty towards my quietly supportive parents. But now, I have no regrets. Because I have such a wonderful family. After giving birth, our family of 3 started living in an apartment close to my parents' house. My parents would come over with extra dishes they made or vegetables they received, always finding reasons to visit. Though I've resigned myself to the fact that having another child at my age is unlikely, my daughter never feels lonely because my parents are always there to play with her, which has been a great help to me.
Grandma's joining us for dinner, right? Is that okay, Ava?
Of course, invite Dad too.
Thank you. Dad said he's bringing some pears from the fridge.
Our ordinary, warm conversations filled the air. Harassment, divorce, illness. I've hit rock bottom at times, but thanks to my parents and my current husband, I'm living happily. And my daughter, who came into my life when I had almost given up on pouring unconditional love like Dad and Mom, has made my life shine brighter.
Mom, here, take this.
My daughter placed an acorn she picked up in the park into my palm.
Wow, thank you. I'll treasure it.
I hugged my daughter. Together as a family, caring for each other, we want to continue cherishing the small joys of life. My name is Kate. I'm a 48-year-old homemaker. In this day and age, some might think being a homemaker is enviable. But I'm not the kind of homemaker who lives in luxury on my husband's earnings. Ben, should I help you wipe down? I'm sorry. Ben, who's in his mid-60s, had a stroke a decade ago when he was still full of energy. Since then, he's been bedridden. All this time, I've been caring for him. We used to worry about not being able to have children when we were younger. But now I see it as a blessing that allows me to devote myself to caregiving. Life is strange, isn't it? Ben's body doesn't move as he wishes, but his mind is clear. Maybe that's why. He always seems to feel sorry towards me. But I wish he wouldn't. I don't find this life too burdensome. Sure, caregiving support services have increased compared to the past, and it's not like I can't take a break at all. But I started caregiving in my 30s, and now I'm in my 40s. I can't deny that my physical strength isn't what it used to be. So, naturally, I wish for some support. From my husband.
Could you give me a hand?
And then, I'm busy right now. Tom, my husband said. I might understand if he were actually working. But how is lying on the sofa and fiddling with his mobile phone busy?
If you're just looking at your phone, help out. It's your dad, after all.
I'm supporting by working, aren't I? Let me rest at least on my days off. Saying that, my husband frowned irritably and stood up to leave the room. It's always the same. He doesn't lift a finger. Even if he can't help with caregiving, it would be nice if he at least took care of himself. My husband, hand on the door, turned back and said,
"Oh yeah, I have a business trip for the next 3 days.
Get everything ready." Again? Can't you at least?
I'm busy. You should do that much as a wife.
Shouting, my husband left the room. Does preparing himself challenge his pride? We're supposed to support each other as a married couple. How did it come to this? No choice. I'll get some help after the helper comes. I sighed and kept staring at the door through which my husband had left.
Is that boy off on a business trip again?
The night my husband left for his trip, as I was drinking coffee, Linda showed up. Linda, who can't get by without her cane due to mobility issues, is otherwise sharp. While Ben was sleeping, I took a break and helped Linda sit down by taking her hand and guiding her to a chair. After taking a sip of the freshly brewed coffee and exhaling, Linda said with a hint of sadness,
"He's always away on business trips several times a month. I wonder if that's really the case."
Well, who knows? Linda and I are probably thinking the same thing. Harboring the same suspicions. Infidelity. That word flickers through my mind. But I deliberately don't voice it. What difference does it make if I find out about my husband's infidelity? He'll surely deny it, and gathering evidence would cost money and effort. But I don't have the luxury to deal with that right now. My affection for my husband is almost non-existent. And naturally, his affection towards me is the same. But having lost my own parents early, my in-laws are as precious to me as my own. I can't abandon them. After all, my husband does contribute financially to the household, so maybe it's better to leave his issues be. After a long life of caregiving, I've given up. It wasn't always like this. My husband used to be kind to me when we were distressed about not being able to have children. He used to be dutiful to his parents. But as soon as the caregiving for his parents began, he changed as if he were a different person. Acting on his own whims, almost as if he was single. He started leaving home frequently, claiming he was on business trips. He grew colder, not just towards his parents, but towards me as well.
You're such an unattractive woman. Eating with you ruins my appetite.
After being bluntly told that, we started eating separately. Now, my husband eats alone, while I feed Ben and share meals with Linda.
I don't want to sleep in the same room.
Since he said that, I've been sleeping on the living room sofa. But the kind and grateful words from my caring in-laws somehow kept me going. Just when I was feeling the distance from my husband, another troubling issue arose. The money my husband was bringing home decreased. Despite discussing various problems, he stubbornly insisted his salary had decreased. But I knew he was lying. I happened to see his pay stub. To my surprise, his salary had actually increased. I wondered if he had received a promotion, but that wasn't the important part. The problem was that he was lying and reducing the money for the household.
That's quite a sum for your parents' taxi, fares to the hospital, and hiring helpers. Our living expenses are.
What? Managing with the money provided is a homemaker's duty. If you can't do that, you're failing as a homemaker. If you can't even manage that, what value do you have? No matter how much I pleaded, my husband wouldn't listen. Seeing this, my in-laws seemed apologetically again. They even offered their meager pensions to help with the living expenses. Feeling sorry, I struggled to make ends meet with the money my husband gave. As a result, our meals became vegetable-centered and modest. My in-laws claimed to prefer such meals, but my husband would say,
"How can I eat such plain food?"
And he started dining out every night. Consequently, the money he brought home decreased even more. A vicious cycle that also lessened his time at home. And in proportion, my spirit dwindled away. On that particular day, Ben's condition suddenly worsened. A stroke had recurred. In no time at all, Ben passed away. Initially, I was stunned, but then tears wouldn't stop flowing. Linda and I hugged and cried in front of Ben, who looked as if he were merely sleeping. At that time, my husband was, yet again, on a business trip. When I finally calmed down a bit and called him,
"Hello? Who's this?"
a woman answered the phone, to my shock. My husband was in the midst of an affair.
"Hey, don't just pick up like that."
I heard my husband's voice, sounding flustered as he snatched the phone away. Normally, I'd be seething with anger in such a situation. But having just lost Ben, my heart felt numb, and I was surprisingly calm. Without confronting him about the affair, I simply informed him that Ben had passed away.
"Oh, really?"
His response was disconcertingly brief. Can someone be this indifferent about their own father's death? To me, my husband seemed as alien as a being from another planet. No, that's an insult to aliens. Even in space, I believe there's some sense of parent-child bond. Throughout the funeral, my husband maintained a detached demeanor. merely going through the motions of being the chief mourner. Relatives consoled the grieving Linda. Meanwhile, the actual son seemed to spend most of the time fiddling with his mobile phone and yawning. Everyone looked at my husband with disdain. Because of him, Ben's funeral, whom I dearly loved, became a dismal affair. A month passed since then. Between dealing with the aftermath of Ben's death and caring for Linda's mental health, time flew by. My husband was in an exceptionally good mood today. Because today was the day Ben's will was to be disclosed. Ben had prepared a notarized will, which doesn't require court verification. It was kept in the lawyer's office. Today, Linda was to bring it from the office and open it. Normally, one would assume the inheritors to be Linda, the wife, and my husband, the only son. I wondered if there was really a need for a will. Could there be a secret child? With bated breath, I watched the proceedings, reminding myself that as a DIL, I had no rights to the inheritance. The lawyer, called in for this day, along with relatives of both in-laws, were present as witnesses. As everyone watched, the lawyer opened and read the will. That was, Linda was to inherit the house and land, and half of all other assets. That was expected. But what followed was shocking. The remaining half wasn't left to my husband, the son.
What? Kate and I are to inherit the remaining half equally?
My husband stood up, shouting in disbelief. Indeed. The will unexpectedly left part of the inheritance to me. Stunned, I watched as my husband pointed at me and yelled furiously.
Why does my wife have to take the inheritance? I'm the real son. Everything, apart from Mom's share, should obviously come to me. But the will states, I don't care. It's invalid. Invalid.
My husband screamed at the lawyer. I was speechless, shocked by the sudden turn of events. But what my husband said next left me completely astounded.
I was the one who mostly took care of Dad. She didn't do much. What?
What is this man saying? I already knew he was a liar, but this lie was too much. He took care of Ben mostly? Who could say such a thing? I couldn't stay silent anymore and was about to speak when.
What are you talking about? Have some shame, you foolish son.
The shout didn't come from me. Unexpectedly, it was Linda. A dramatic soundtrack seemed to play as Linda's face filled the screen. Or at least, that's how it felt. Then, a close-up of my husband's shocked face. Silence fell over the room. Linda, usually so quiet and never raising her voice, had taken us all by surprise. My husband, stunned by her uncharacteristic fierceness, was speechless. In the midst of this, Linda continued.
Mostly took care of Ben, you say? Which mouth of yours is saying that? You do nothing but play with your phone or watch TV every day. You don't even eat at home. You barely contribute any money to the household. And to top it off, you lie about business trips to cheat. You really don't deserve a cent of the inheritance. What? Is that true?
Reacting to Linda's words were Ben's brothers. Strong-looking men due to their construction business. Confronted by these imposing figures, my husband seemed even smaller.
Eh? What do you mean? Mom, I might not have been home much, but the affair accusation is just baseless. Don't make random claims without any evidence.
My husband was stuttering and sweating in panic. Without missing a beat, Linda produced a large envelope. Where did that come from? Did she have it hidden? I hadn't noticed it at all.
Do you know what this is? It's filled with evidence of your affairs. I didn't think Kate, who worked so hard taking care of Ben, would have the means. And I hired a detective. Be prepared.
With that, Linda scattered the contents of the envelope.
Ah!
After my husband's scream, the relatives reacted.
What is this?
Ugh, that's disgusting. Really, my eyes feel dirty now. The reaction from the relatives was one of disappointment. The contents were numerous embarrassing photos of my husband and his mistress. What are they even doing outdoors? I didn't know my husband had such hobbies. Never thought I'd discover such hidden sides of my husband after 20 years of marriage. Like the relatives, I was appalled.
Shame on you. Doing such disgraceful things. Claiming you took care of Ben, saying Kate did nothing. Insisting the inheritance is all yours. How dare you say such things? You shameless, unfilial son. Apologize to Kate. It's not like that. This is wrong. It's not wrong, you foolish son.
Linda, calm down, please. You'll burst a blood vessel. It's too early to follow Ben. Perhaps it was Linda's towering rage that allowed me, the one who should be most upset, to remain calm.
Linda, please calm down. Breathe in, breathe out, inhale, exhale.
That foolish son. After some deep breathing, Linda calmed down a bit. But her anger was far from subsiding. Seeing her like this made me start to laugh.
Kate?
Surprised, Linda looked at me as I suddenly burst into laughter. I smiled at Linda and then hugged her. Thank you so much, Linda.
Kate?
For getting angry on my behalf, for conducting such an investigation for me. I really appreciate it. Of course. You are my precious daughter, after all. Daughter. I never realized how happy being called that could make me. Since Ben's passing, I've become quite teary, and once again, tears welled up. But I can't spend all my time crying. After stepping away from Linda, I wiped away my tears roughly and looked at my husband. You.
What?
Let's get a divorce.
Fine by me, I'll gladly do it.
I desperately suppressed another wave of laughter and then confirmed with my husband.
So, about the will, about the inheritance? All right, I accept Dad's will.
I looked at the lawyer, who slowly nodded. The lawyer was designated as the executor of the will. I was sure he would handle the following procedures smoothly. Taking a moment to breathe, I then moved on to another matter.
Shall we begin?
My statement was met with nods from Linda and the attending relatives. My husband was the only one who didn't understand.
What more is there to discuss?
To my clueless husband, I said with a smile. It's obvious, isn't it?
The compensation claim for your affair. What?
Why did he think it would all end here? With evidence of his infidelity right in front of us, it wasn't going to be just a divorce and goodbye.
Don't joke. Compensation on top of the inheritance. What a greedy woman you are. Coming from someone who pushed the care of his parents onto his wife and had affairs.
Really, the nerve. Don't joke is my line.
We have a lawyer here, and plenty of witnesses, so why don't we have a thorough discussion? I just remembered something I have to do. What could be more important than what we're doing now? Don't run away, you fool!
Before I could grab his hand, someone else grabbed my husband by the neck. It was Ben's brother, hardened by his construction work. Behind him stood Ben's equally formidable brother. They nodded in agreement. Muscles really do have an impact. After that, under the watchful eyes of the Muscle brothers, other relatives, and Linda, my husband couldn't flee. He had no choice but to stay and discuss until everything was settled.
Today's another beautiful day.
Looking up, the sky was cloudless and clear. Half a year had passed since then. Thanks to the lawyer, the inheritance proceedings went very smoothly.
The divorce was finalized, and I was enjoying living alone. I really wanted to live with Linda, but now that we were strangers due to the divorce, Linda stubbornly refused, not wanting to make me her caregiver again. As a result, Linda moved into a nursing home with the money from selling the house. I visit her once a week. It seems like a wonderful place, and Linda seems happy. In the end, I feel like this was the best outcome. The house was sold. That means, essentially, the house was gone. As for my ex-husband, who was practically kicked out, well, according to the will, he received his share of the inheritance. He was overjoyed at first, but then his face turned pale. Why? Because the inheritance had almost vanished. The reason goes without saying. Compensation, of course. My husband's inheritance was gone. Not enough from the inheritance alone, so he also had to pay from his savings. As a result, my husband ended up penniless. And more than that, it seems his affair became known at his company. Particularly among the female staff, he was given the cold shoulder and became quite isolated, leading to a series of mistakes, it seems.
That woman, she's my boss, but didn't defend me properly,
he was saying over the phone. And it turns out that this boss was a woman and, astonishingly, the mistress was his boss. Maybe that explains the mysterious salary raise. But as soon as the affair came to light, he was dumped by the mistress, who also faced a demotion due to the affair and other ethics violations. I made sure she paid compensation too. That's only right.
It's your fault I kept making mistakes and got fired.
He tried to blame it all on me. But that's not my problem, is it?
You got used to caring for Ben, so looking after me should be easy for you,
he said, but no, that's entirely different. I couldn't respond with anything but laughter. So, I blocked his calls. I don't know what became of my husband after that. And I don't want to know. To forget about that foolish husband, I started working, and it turned out to be refreshing and enjoyable. The world is so much broader than I thought. A sense of excitement for a bright future welled up in me unknowingly. Gazing up at the contrails stretching straight across the blue sky, I squinted my eyes.
Our son is going to live with you, Mom. Even if he's sick, being with your grandchild every day is a blessing, right?
The voice of my son on the phone dripped with malice, as if mocking me. I hugged my grandson tightly, covering his ears so he wouldn't hear that voice. My grandson, who just turned 7, was recently taken to the hospital. There, he was diagnosed with a certain illness, and my son and his wife left him at my house. Coming home from work, I found my grandson sitting dejectedly at the entrance. My heart nearly leaped out of my chest. He told me himself,
I was abandoned by Mom and Dad because I'm sick.
I wish they could understand how I felt. I immediately called my son. What followed was a brazen declaration of abandonment. My daughter-in-law, likely beside my son, let out a vulgar laugh, saying,
We don't want to catch his illness. Let the short-lived elderly take care of him.
She hurled insults worse than my son's and cut off the call with a harsh laugh. The phone, abruptly disconnected, never connected again. Looking at my trembling grandson in my arms, I made up my mind. I will raise him. First of all, my name is Frida. I'm 57 and a company employee. I married my husband at 22 and gave birth to our son, Morty, the following year. My husband adored Morty, and the three of us lived happily together.
He's so adorable. I'm so happy such a cute child was born to us,
my husband would say, holding Morty and beaming with joy. But that happiness didn't last long. When Morty was 2, my husband suddenly fell ill and passed away. I was heartbroken, but I had no time to grieve. I had to raise Morty alone. From then on, I worked tirelessly, raising Morty as a single mother. I never remarried. Luckily,
I had been a full-time employee since before marriage, so I managed to raise Morty without financial struggles. Now Morty is 34. He works as a company employee in a general business, but Morty has always been somewhat flighty and easily influenced. He got his current job because a college senior suggested it, and he just went along with it. When Morty was 26, he married a woman his age named Maya. Maya was very strong-willed, and I never had a good impression of her even during their dating days. For instance, Maya would frequently visit our house but never once said hello or goodbye. I gently brought this up to Maya at one point. "Maya, it's great you come to visit, but I'd appreciate it if you'd say hello when you arrive." Maya reacted defiantly, visibly annoyed. "What? You don't have the right to tell me what to do. I'm a guest here. I'm doing you a favor by visiting. It's really unpleasant to be told such arbitrary things." I was stunned by her brash response. Morty, on his part, would say things like, "Mom, don't be so stiff." I thought it was common sense to greet when visiting someone's home, but it seemed not to apply to Maya. Morty appeared completely under the thumb of the assertive Maya. After Maya left, I reiterated my point to Morty, but just let it go. He just brushed it off. Incidents like these often happened, so I didn't have a good impression of Maya. Of course, I repeatedly told Morty to be more responsible. The couple rented an apartment after their marriage and started living near our house. The following year, they had their first son, Darren. My first grandchild. Children grow up so fast, and in no time, Darren turned 7. One day, as I was returning from work and my house came into view, I noticed someone sitting at the entrance. Who could that be? As I got closer, I realized it was Darren. Having been busy with work recently and not seeing my son's family or Darren, I was both surprised and overjoyed to see him after so long.
Darren, it's been a while. What are you doing here?
When I called out to him, Darren slowly lifted his face to meet my eyes. Grandma. Seeing Darren's face after such a long time, I was lost for words. His face had white, patchy areas, and his eyes were swollen red as if he had been crying. I tried to remain as calm as possible and invited Darren inside. And? Darren, what happened? Can you tell Grandma about it? I gently asked him. He nodded slowly and began to speak in bits and pieces. Well, I got a skin disease. I forgot its name because it was complicated, but it's a rare disease. Seeing young Darren's lips quiver and his face turn pale, my heart ached. A rare disease. Is that really what you were told? Yes, Mom and Dad said that. Ever since I got this disease, they stopped looking at my face. And today, they brought me here to Grandma's house and told me to wait for you, and then they went away. Shocked by Darren's story, I hurriedly called Morty. To prevent Darren from hearing the conversation, I asked him to stay in the living room and drink juice while I moved to another room.
Morty, I heard from Darren. How could you leave him at our doorstep without telling me anything?
Mom, you're back. Yeah, Darren has this rare disease called pityriasis simplex. It's really troublesome. Pityriasis simplex. I remembered hearing that name before. I had seen a feature on it on TV once. Wasn't it just white spots? White spots are common in children and not a rare disease. Is it really a rare disease? The dermatologist said it's pityriasis simplex. It's a complicated name, so it must be rare, right? So, since we could catch it too, Maya suggested you should raise him, and I agreed. So, Mom, please take care of Darren for us. Thanks.
What? You call yourselves parents? That's so irresponsible.
I shouted in anger at Morty's outrageous statement. Then Maya took over the call, and her shrill voice echoed.
Morty and I are still young and have our lives ahead of us. It would be terrible to catch such a creepy skin disease. So let the short-lived elderly take care of him. Bye.
With that unilateral shout, the call was disconnected. Stunned, I quickly took out a book from the bookshelf that listed various diseases and their treatments and looked up pityriasis simplex. Thank goodness. It's just white spots. He'll be fine. The research confirmed that pityriasis simplex was not a rare disease and, with proper treatment, could be cured in most cases. I felt relieved and simultaneously furious at my selfish son and daughter-in-law. I realized they had abandoned Darren at our house, assuming it was a rare disease from its complicated name. How selfish of them. I will definitely raise Darren well. I muttered with determination and returned to the living room. I smiled at Darren, who looked anxious. Darren, don't worry. Your illness is curable. Let's go to the hospital together tomorrow. Really? Darren, thinking it was incurable, lit up. Yes, it's not a rare disease, so don't worry. And Darren, from today, you'll live with Grandma. It's okay. I'll make sure you're happy. Let's live together happily. Darren looked a bit bewildered, but then nodded. Thank you, Grandma. And smiled. Time passed, and 9 years went by. I turned 66, and Darren became 16. During these 9 years, I couldn't make any contact with my son and his wife. Darren, in his teenage years, didn't talk much lately but grew up kind, occasionally cooking meals. Now retired, I support Darren with my pension and retirement funds. Then one day, my son and his wife, who disappeared 9 years ago, suddenly appeared at home. What do you want now, after all this time? I coldly confronted them at the entrance. How dare they show their faces after not contacting us for 9 years? Hey, we saw you on TV the other day. Surprised us. Darren is amazing. Earning so much money at his age, huh? Apparently, they had seen a recent TV interview, Teenage Genius Inventor. Maya, standing next to Morty, also chimed in with a sneer. Getting a patent and all, that's really amazing. You must be so rich now, huh? Indeed, Darren was skilled at inventing, and he had recently obtained a patent. It was clear from their attitude that Morty and Maya believed Darren was making money from his patent and had come here today with that in mind. They hadn't expressed any concern for Darren, they only talked about him becoming rich. They're still the worst couple. Then Darren appeared behind me. He must have heard our conversation. Hey Darren. We've come to take you back. A son is a son, even if he suffers from an illness. Let's live together again with your dad and mom. Morty's exaggerated behavior was almost laughable. To this, Darren responded coldly. Huh? Who the heck are you? Darren, now a high school student, was old enough to understand the situation. He realized from the conversation that his parents were after money, and felt no attachment to them, having been abandoned. Morty and Maya seemed taken aback by Darren's indifferent attitude, but quickly regained composure and started talking fluently. Darren is sick, so his life will be tough. That's why Maya and I will support him. Morty declared. What? After you abandoned me, you have the nerve to act all fatherly now? Don't pretend to be a dad. Darren, having listened to them for a while, clicked his tongue in disgust and scoffed. I was also astonished that they still mistakenly thought Darren had a rare disease. Darren's face had completely healed. Morty, Maya, you've been mistaken all along. Darren doesn't have a rare disease. Pityriasis simplex is just white spots, common in children. Darren completely recovered in about a year. Stunned by my explanation, Morty suddenly changed his attitude and shouted. We've been tricked. Screw you. Why didn't you tell us something so important? Maya followed suit. We were kidnapped by an old woman. You've taken our child for 9 years. Give back our child, Frida, you old kidnapper. And cursed at me. Ignoring their rants, Darren quickly took out his mobile phone and called the police. The police are on their way. And just so you know, getting a patent doesn't mean you become rich instantly. You need companies to use the technology, and only then do you get patent fees.
It's not some epic-making discovery, nor is it a widely used patent, so it's just a dream to be filthy rich. The money I've received so far has all gone to materials. So, I don't have any money.
After Darren explained calmly, Morty and Maya turned red with anger, screaming.
What the hell? Then why did you call us here?
Seeing their reaction, Darren sighed.
I don't know. You came here on your own, so don't get angry at us.
Just go home. Seeing Darren laugh, Morty shouted.
Don't you get smart with me.
His fist was clenched, ready to lash out at Darren, so I instinctively jumped forward to intervene. Just as Morty was about to swing at me, a loud male voice rang out.
Stop it!
A police officer was outside the window. He had seen Morty about to hit Darren through the curtain and acted quickly. While his shout startled Morty, another officer quietly entered from the entrance, stepping between us and Morty. Morty waved his open hand, feigning innocence. He then sneered at Darren.
You might be an inventor or whatever, but don't get cocky. Live with that old woman for the rest of your life.
With that parting shot, he left. The police asked if we were okay, and we said yes. After explaining the situation, we were advised not to let my son and his wife into our home again, and I nodded in agreement. The police reassured us they would help if needed, leaving me relieved. After the police left, I asked Darren.
Are you okay?
Concerned about his mental state. I knew he must be hurt, even if he acted tough, after being treated that way by his biological parents. However, Darren admitted.
I'd be lying if I said I wasn't shocked. I knew my parents were the worst for abandoning me without understanding my illness. But I didn't expect them to be that stupid, thinking I'm rich just because of a patent. All those nice words, thinking I'd agree to live with them.
He sighed deeply, clearly displeased, and ruffled his hair. Then he looked down at me, smiling.
But Grandma, why did you try to protect me when I was about to get hit?
I'm 16 now, and I'm bigger than you. I don't need protection. He asked me as if he was dumbfounded, which left me dumbfounded.
What are you talking about? No matter how old they get, you want to protect your kids. Their size doesn't matter.
Darren groaned softly, then turned away.
I'd hate it more if you got hurt.
He said gruffly, heading to his room. It seemed he was worried about me. I felt happy, realizing how kind Darren had grown. After that, I quickly contacted a certain person. A few days later, I went to the house where my son and his wife currently lived, accompanied by a certain person. When I rang the doorbell, Morty opened the door lazily and was shocked to see me and the person beside me.
Lean! Why?
The person next to me was Lean, Morty's friend. Morty's voice startled Maya, who also came from the back.
Lean!
Her face turning pale. Ignoring me, the couple was visibly shaken by Lean's arrival.
Long time no see, Morty, Maya.
Lean greeted them, and Morty, looking agitated.
How did you find this place?
He asked. I answered his question.
When you came to our house the other day, you mentioned to Darren that you now live in a single-family home in this town.
I didn't miss that.
But how did you find this specific house with just the town's name? We didn't give you any detailed address.
Morty exclaimed in panic.
That's true, knowing just the town's name wouldn't be enough to find your address, so I hired a detective to focus on this town. A detective?
Yes,
and it didn't take long for them to find you. Then, I contacted Lean and we decided to come see you together today. Using a detective is cheating. That's no different from stalking.
Lean glared at Morty.
I've got nothing to say to fraudsters. Anyway, Morty, Maya, return the money I lent you.
Lean's stern voice filled the room, causing the couple to tremble. Lean, a friend of Morty's, had lent them money. I only found out about this after my son and his wife had disappeared for some time. Lean came to my house to consult about lending them money and not being able to contact them anymore. He came all the way to visit me, wondering if they might have returned to a parent's house due to financial struggles so bad that they had to run away to avoid paying him back, and asked me to let him know if I ever found out their whereabouts.
You too told Lean that Darren had a rare disease and you were in a tight spot financially, and got $5,000 from him by playing on his sympathy.
My words made my son and his wife look down, trembling.
It wasn't just Lean, you did the same thing with others, borrowing money here and there. Then, when repayment became difficult, you abandoned Darren at our house and disappeared without paying back anyone, exploiting people's kindness for your own gain. You're the lowest of the low. No. But we really thought Darren had a rare disease. Yes, we really did. That's why we borrowed the money.
Frustrated with their excuses, I shouted.
What are you talking about? Even if you thought so, you never treated Darren's condition. You took him to a dermatologist once and then neglected him, not spending a dime on his treatment. So where's the money you borrowed from your friends? Do you have it with you if you didn't use it for treatment costs? Of course, you don't. You probably squandered it on yourselves. As parents and human beings, you're the absolute worst. Shame on you. Ugh.
They fell silent.
The real reason you left Darren at my house wasn't because you were afraid of his disease spreading, it was to evade the debts you owed. Months before abandoning Darren, you frequently went on trips and started wearing only branded items, didn't you? No, but it's true that we didn't want to be around Darren because his disease was creepy.
Even at this point, they still tried to justify. And with despicable excuses, too. Sighing deeply.
Darren is fortunate not to have grown up with parents like you. He might have ended up with a twisted personality because of you. I'm so glad he has grown into a kind and admirable young man.
I said. My son and his wife made sullen faces, not seeming convinced. Lean said sternly to the two.
I have a good idea who else you've defrauded, so I'm planning to contact them and start a class action lawsuit. You better be prepared. A lawsuit? Wait a minute. Isn't that a bit too drastic?
Too drastic? Not at all.
Unless you can repay right now all the money you borrowed from me and others, which I guess you've already spent, right?
Lean pressed. My son and his wife were speechless.
I never imagined being betrayed by a longtime friend like you, Morty. I became distrustful of people for a while after you two disappeared. I will never forgive you.
Lean said, glaring at them with hatred. I told my son and his wife.
Don't worry about Darren. He's a high school student now, capable of making his own decisions. Please don't contact him anymore.
I was firm in cutting ties with them. Months later, despite being threatened, Morty and his wife still hadn't repaid the money. They were sued in a class action by the people they owed. Though each person was owed less than $10,000, the total was overwhelming for them. They ended up selling the house they had bought just a few years prior. But because they had a mortgage, most of the proceeds went to paying that off, and the little that was left went towards the lawsuit settlement. Even though it was their most valuable asset, I couldn't believe they had to sell their house. It turned out they sold the house intending to move back into mine. I learned this sometime after the lawsuit, when I got a phone call from an enraged Morty.
Mom! What the hell? Our house is gone. What's going on?
What do you mean?
As the for sale sign says, I sold the house and land. It's quite obvious, isn't it?
Indeed, I had decided to sell the house and land even before they faced the lawsuit. Real estate agents said that vacant houses are hard to sell, and that it was better to demolish and sell the land. Following their advice, I demolished the house and quickly sold the land due to its good location. The money went towards moving with Darren. Actually, Darren was attending a high school quite far away, and commuting from the old house was quite the journey. So we moved closer to his school for a shorter commute. When I explained this, Morty started shouting.
What? Where are you living now? We have nowhere to live since we sold our house. Tell me your address, we'll live with you.
There's no way I'll tell you. One reason I sold the house and land was to cut ties with you. I won't tell you where we live, and I'm blocking your number, so don't contact us ever again.
No. No way. That's too harsh.
Morty was stunned, and behind him, Maya's despairing scream could be heard. The ones who are truly terrible are you too. You don't seem to be remorseful at all, but you should reflect on your actions and attitudes. The last thing I can say to you as a parent is to learn to introspect and repent. Goodbye, I said and ended the call, setting it to block further communication. My disillusioned son and his wife managed to find an old apartment to live in, but they seemed to be leading a tough life. Afterwards, I consulted with the lawyer hired by Lean and reconsidered my relationship with Darren. Until now, I had raised him as a grandmother. But Morty and his wife's presence was negatively influencing Darren. So, I considered legally becoming his parent through adoption. If it were recognized, I wouldn't have to divide my estate equally between Darren and Morty when I pass away. It would prevent Morty from running off with everything. I decided to check with Darren. Darren, I want to adopt you. Not just as a grandmother and grandson, but legally as mother and son. What do you think? I respect your feelings, of course. After a moment of silence. Yeah, I want to be your son officially. Darren smiled shyly and said. With Darren's consent, I contacted the family court with the help of a lawyer. Given Morty's terrible behavior, the adoption was relatively easily approved. Likely influenced by Darren being 16 years old. Darren and I successfully completed the adoption process. It was a joyous moment for me, especially knowing that he chose me over his biological parents even when he is still in his adolescence. Darren, talented in inventing, is always trying new things, and I'm living a peaceful life, enjoying watching him grow.
Did the luggage arrive? My parents are moving in with us starting today. Please take care of them.
What a joke. Those were the first words that came out of him. As if I wasn't angry enough with James already. Just how selfish can James be?
Well, that's that. I'm sure you'll be fine.
I knew what James was up to. He wanted to keep me in check by bringing his parents over while hoping to receive various forms of support himself. Anger surged through me, but I quickly smirked. Oh, I've already moved out.
What?
I had to suppress my laughter at James's dumbfounded voice. It seemed he had forgotten who owned that house. My brother Liam, who was listening in, was also trying hard not to laugh. Did you forget? That house originally belonged to my grandparents, and it's in my name. Oh. So, whose permission were you planning to get for this cohabitation? The last thing I wanted was to let such people into my home. Natalie, who enjoys harassing me, and Joseph, who does what he pleases to his grandson without caring about his feelings. And so I continued.
Did you think I didn't know anything? You'll pay the price for this.
My name is Layla. I'm a 32-year-old working mother on parental leave. I have a husband, James, and a 1-year-old son, Oliver. Oliver has recently started walking on his own, so he requires constant attention. Yet, his toddling around is incredibly endearing, and it's comforting when he calls me with his small mouth.
Oliver really loves his mom, huh?
I met James, the father of our son Oliver, through work. My family runs a traditional bakery. Every day, we bake delicious bread, and with smiles, we sell it alongside my parents and brother. Excuse me, miss. Could I have your name and contact details? One day, James, a regular customer, approached me. Seeing James blush as he asked me out, I found him endearing, and we started dating. Your cooking is delicious. Is it? Thank you. Yeah. So, will you continue to cook for me? By my side. And so, we got married without any issues. My parents were overjoyed by our marriage, but my younger brother Liam always seemed to be looking on with skepticism. But he didn't particularly object, so I believe he's happy for us.
Liam says he will take over the shop because living with us would just wear James out.
So with my father's suggestion, the three of us are living in my deceased grandparents' house. We plan to watch Oliver grow up together here. One day, I took Oliver shopping with me. Oliver was holding my hand and toddling as hard as he could.
Oh, Oliver!
We came together. Now, say hello to your grandma.
Oh my God, Oliver!
When we bought bread at my parents' bakery, the regulars and my parents greeted Oliver with smiles. Oliver, unafraid of strangers, was always smiling. Since our house and the bakery are about an hour's drive apart, we visit my parents' home about once a month. And when Oliver and I, in high spirits, returned home.
What? Don't tell me.
The entrance door was unlocked. And there, familiar shoes greeted us. And, as expected, I sighed. Natalie, we did ask you to call ahead before coming, didn't we? Finally back, are you? Where on earth have you been? Ignoring my words, my mother-in-law laid there, watching TV. She probably entered using the spare key James had given her. I sighed again at Natalie, who never listens, no matter how many times I tell her. Come on, don't dawdle. Get on with the chores. I'll take care of Oliver. Saying so, she grabbed Oliver from me, telling me to clean up the mess from the snacks she had eaten. I wish she'd clean up after herself and not touch my son with her crumb-covered hands.
But if I tell her so, it would result in her complaining, as if I'm dirty, and to Oliver, she would exaggerate and say, "What a scary mommy." Excuse me, Natalie. Please don't say weird things to Oliver.
I retorted to Natalie and took sleepy Oliver to his room. Then, enduring Natalie's sarcastic remarks, I continued with the chores. Honestly, I wish I could just ignore Natalie, but if I take my eyes off her for even a moment, she would try to take Oliver and leave. You're such a bore. I'll be leaving now. Saying so, Natalie left. Which was a relief for me, so I saw her out with a smile.
Natalie can be such a handful.
Muttering to myself, I finished the chores I had left midway. I understand Natalie wants to see Oliver, her only grandchild. But I really wish she would stop coming to our house every day, using the spare key to let herself in.
Hey, could you please take the spare key away from Natalie?
What? Why? After James came home, I talked to him about Natalie. James looked troubled even after hearing me out. I glared at James.
If you don't take the spare key from Natalie, I'll change the locks. And I won't give you a key this time.
Okay, all right. I'll take the spare key from Mom. Are you happy? Pressured by me, James reluctantly agreed. I thought this would make things a bit better. But I was about to be disappointed.
I'm going to take the spare key from her, so could you come to my parents' house with me this weekend?
James asked me. Reluctantly, but wanting to see the key taken away myself for the sake of my mind's peace, I agreed to go to my in-laws with Oliver. You're finally here. There's plenty of housework for you, so get moving. We'll take care of Oliver. As soon as we entered my in-laws' house, Oliver was taken by my in-laws, and I was burdened with chores. Glancing at James, he stubbornly avoided my gaze. James tricked me. He set me up. Despite feeling betrayed, the odds were 3-1 against me. Wanting to leave the dusty and dirty in-laws' house as soon as possible, I quickly got to work. While I was cleaning, I heard Oliver's loud cries.
Oliver! What's wrong?
Rushing over in a panic, I found Oliver crying and squirming in Joseph's arms, reaching out towards me. I quickly took Oliver from Joseph's grasp.
What did you do to Oliver?
Quiet down. We didn't do anything to him. Yeah, that's right. When I glared, James, who had turned practically invisible, explained what happened. Apparently, Joseph grabbed Oliver as he was trying to follow me and forcibly held him back. Despite Oliver's desire to come to me, Joseph was tossing him around as if they were just playing. That's why Oliver was bawling. That's the reason I rushed over.
Oliver is such a crybaby for a boy.
Exactly.
It's because he's being raised by a bad mother. He should be with us. I can't leave Oliver in a place like this. Excuse us.
I hugged Oliver tightly and stormed out of the in-laws' house. I shouldn't have trusted James's words. I'm sorry, Oliver. Once home, I put the worn-out Oliver to bed and vented to my mother about everything. James, who I left at his parents' house, didn't even bother to contact us. About an hour later, the doorbell rang.
Sis, can I talk to you? Liam? What's up all of a sudden? Mom said to check on you. I brought this as a gift.
There stood Liam, holding a loaf of bread from our family bakery. He offered to do the housework for me, saying I must be tired, and cheerfully took care of Oliver when he woke up, brightening both our moods.
You're a lifesaver, Liam. It's nothing. We're family, after all. Mom also said you can come back home anytime.
Hearing that, I felt a deep sense of relief knowing I had such a supportive family. James returned a few hours after Liam left. He had the nerve to come back after eating at his parents' house.
I've been hurt by all of this, and Oliver too. I'm really sorry. But it's not like my parents meant any harm. Oliver was crying.
He would show signs of remorse when I got angry. But it didn't seem sincere, and I couldn't trust him anymore. I was even starting to think about divorce.
James, wake up. James?
When I woke up in the morning, James was nowhere to be found. Instead, there was a note left behind.
I'm heading to Los Angeles for a business trip starting today. Such things should be said in person.
Well, it's less irritating without him here. And taking some distance might help us cool down.
If he's not here, changing the locks shouldn't be a problem, right? This will give us some peace for a while, Oliver.
Oliver, looking at me laughing, laughed too, even though he didn't understand the words. With him by my side, I didn't need James. That was what I was thinking. So, we started living separately for a while. It seemed he was on a long business trip and very busy, making it difficult for him to return. I really miss seeing Oliver. And I miss your cooking. The distance between us led to reconciliation, and we were reporting to each other via video call once a week. Meanwhile, there was no contact from Natalie. Despite changing the locks, I half expected her to keep ringing the doorbell, but nothing happened. It was peaceful, yet inside me was this feeling of an eerie calm before the storm.
Sis, something terrible has happened.
That's when I got a call from Liam, sounding panicked. Listening to him, I learned a secret about James.
That idiot. I'll never forgive him.
Filled with anger, I began to prepare for retaliation. My parents, informed by Liam, also helped, and everything was ready 2 days later. Just as Liam and I were about to leave the house with Oliver, there was a knock.
I have a delivery for you. Is that so? Please leave it here for now.
A huge amount of luggage arrived at our house. The names on it were my in-laws. I immediately called James.
Did the luggage arrive? My parents are moving in with us starting today. Please take care of them.
What a joke. That was the first thing he said. As if I wasn't angry enough with James already. How selfish can James be?
Well, that's that. I'm sure you'll be fine.
I knew James's intentions well enough. He wanted to use his parents moving in as leverage over me, hoping to get various kinds of support from them. Rage surged through me, but I quickly smirked back at him.
Oh, I've already moved out. What?
James's dumbfounded voice was hard to hold back laughter at. Apparently, he had forgotten who owned that house. Even Liam, listening by, struggled to keep his laughter in check. Did you forget?
That house originally belonged to my grandparents, and it's in my name.
Oh. So, whose permission were you planning to get for this cohabitation? The idea of letting those people into my home was out of the question. Natalie, who enjoys harassing me, and Joseph, who does what he pleases to his grandson without caring about his feelings. And so I continued.
Did you think I didn't know anything? You'll pay the price for this.
Who would want to live with a husband who cheats while on business trips?
Hold on, moved out? Exactly as I said. I've already sold the house. What? Why would you do something so drastic without telling me? My parents are supposed to arrive there this afternoon.
It seemed he had planned to force the cohabitation on me without my consent. The reason Natalie hadn't dropped by unannounced recently must have been because she was busy packing for the move. I can only imagine how tough it must have been to clear out the cluttered in-laws' house. But that was none of my business.
That's not my problem. Don't you dare joke with me.
You're the one joking, aren't you?
Your parents' belongings are in front of the entrance. Goodbye.
With that, I hung up the phone. He tried calling back immediately, but I rejected the call and blocked all his contacts.
Sorry for making you wait. It's fine. Let's go.
I truly owed Liam. The revelation of James's affair came through him. Liam had spotted James arm in arm with an unfamiliar woman at Universal Studios in Los Angeles, where he had gone with his girlfriend, Emily.
I hadn't seen James since the wedding, but I remembered him because he was a regular at the bakery.
Liam managed to capture evidence of the affair and informed me. Then, with my parents' help, I quickly started making arrangements. Among the bakery's regulars was a private investigator who gathered further evidence. Through connections, a lawyer was introduced to me. A real estate friend of my father's quickly took action regarding the house.
The house was renovated before you two moved in, making it very appealing. It's close to a school and within walking distance to a train station. So, it will sell high and it would be easy to find a buyer.
True to his word, the house was sold quickly. And today was supposed to be the closing day, but instead, a massive amount of in-laws' belongings arrived.
Welcome back, Layla. And you too, Oliver. Both of you, welcome home. You must be tired.
Thanks to my parents' warm welcome, I let out a sigh of relief.
I'm home.
As I said it with a smile, Oliver too chirped in energetically. Everyone laughed in response. Now, all that's left is to fight back.
Mama will do her best, so cheer for me, okay?
To my words, Oliver showed his usual adorable smile.
Ah, Layla. Are you the shop assistant today? That's right. Hope you buy a lot.
Then, I started manning the storefront while taking care of Oliver. The regulars greeted me with smiles. Being back at the shop was a joyful time for me. It was thinking so to myself when James and the in-laws appeared.
Layla. Layla.
I stopped what I was doing, handed Oliver over to my mother, and confronted James and his parents.
Let's not disturb the customers here, shall we step outside? I don't care about the other customers. Forget about them, how could you be so selfish? Oh, like going on a business trip and cheating is any better?
My words caused the regulars to give James cold looks. Noticing that, James went silent for a moment, but he retorted back.
We planned to live in that house, and we sold our home for it. Where do you expect us to live now? And according to James, it seems like Layla is the one who's been cheating.
The in-laws started shouting that. I was taken aback by Joseph's words. Me, cheating? That's absolutely impossible. I am devoted solely to Oliver.
What are you talking about? I've never cheated. Lies. A young man was seen leaving our house.
A young man coming and going from that house, that could only be.
Must be my younger brother, Liam. What? Your brother? Didn't I tell you? I have a younger brother.
As we were talking, Liam appeared from the back. Seeing his face, James looked surprised.
It's been since the wedding, James. What? That's really your brother? So? You thought I was cheating and without checking, and you cheated yourself?
The business trip was real. However, he had met a woman there and developed a relationship. And without returning home, he chose to nurture his love instead.
And then, you went into debt for her. What?
At my words, the in-laws now turned their gaze sharply towards James. Meanwhile, James's face turned pale, wondering, how did you know?
Unlike you, I did my investigation properly. Not satisfied with just our joint account money, you resorted to borrowing, right? Was it $20,000?
When I checked the account after a long time, there were only a few dollars left, which was a shock. Basically, our living expenses were covered by the salary I had before going on maternity leave. That money was deposited into my personal account from before we were married, securely saved without being touched. For the joint account, we had agreed to deposit money regularly for Oliver's future expenses.
But this is too much. Shall we let others decide then?
My house, inherited from my grandparents and in my name, where James decided on his own to move his parents in, while he indulged in affairs and debts. Me, angered by James, selling my house and moving back to my parents.
Who's in the wrong here, huh?
At my words, the regulars glared at James and his family. Realizing they were at a disadvantage, James and his family backed down.
Could you please leave?
With a smile, I said that, and James and his party hastily left the store. After successfully driving them away, I received applause from the regulars, making me blush and smile shyly. Later, for the affair and for storming into the bakery during business hours, causing a disturbance, I demanded compensation from James and his family. James, already burdened with debt from his affair, and his inherently irresponsible in-laws had no money. Thus, they had to sell whatever they could to come up with the money.
Days later, James came back to me, saying, "I truly regret everything. Please help me."
Saying this, James clung to me desperately. I sighed deeply at James.
Do you think I can trust your apologies?
No, this time I really am.
Enough. If you keep pestering me, I'll call the police.
James looked dejected at my words. I gave him a cold stare.
I know why you wanted to live with those two.
James shivered at my words. The in-laws had always complained about their small house and wanted someone for housekeeping. Essentially, they wanted to live in that house with me being their housekeeper. James, always swayed by me, thought having his parents around would make me listen. If they managed to cohabit, he planned to use the saved money for his affair or debt repayment. He probably hoped they'd find my savings account from before I was single.
Am I wrong? How do you know all that? Working in customer service means observing people. Plus, I married you because I loved you, even if you approached me first. If you love someone even once, you watch them closely, and living together, I've come to understand your way of thinking.
James looked down. And then James, in anger, tried to hit me.
Damn it!
But his hand was stopped before it could reach me by someone who intervened.
That's going too far.
Liam glared sharply at James. Liam has been practicing martial arts since he was young, so he's in very good shape. James, gripped and glared at by my strong brother, completely lost his energy and slumped.
Don't you ever show your face in front of my sister again!
Shouted by Liam, James left with a pathetic sound.
Thanks, Liam. Don't mention it. If anything happens, just let me know. I'll chase them away.
Liam, saying this with a smile, seemed incredibly reliable.
You used to be such a crybaby, always hiding behind me. Come on, stop it. I'm an adult now. And I have things to protect. Right. You definitely can't become like that man. Liam laughed at my words, of course.
I knew he would protect Emily properly.
Both of you, I need your help.
Okay. Called by my mom, we returned to the store. After that, James, seemingly terrified of Liam, didn't show his face again. Furthermore, when the divorce papers were sent through a lawyer, he signed them without fuss. And so, we were officially divorced.
Actually, the regulars were furious about what happened, saying, "How dare you make Layla suffer?"
According to my mom, the regulars had spread the word about what happened at the store. It became a rumor, and employees at James's company got the wind of it. James quickly lost his place at the company due to the widespread knowledge. Under the cold gaze of his colleagues, James quit his job.
"I know I did wrong, so please help us."
I learned that from a call from Natalie. I had completely forgotten I still had the in-laws' contact information saved because I've been so busy.
"What exactly do you want help with?"
That would be financial support, of course.
"Unfortunately, I'm not kind enough to help someone who has harassed me."
With that, I hung up the phone. This time, I made sure to block the contact information properly. Afterward, James was unable to come up with the money for compensation and child support and ended up incurring even more debt. As for the affair partner, it seems she dumped James quickly after realizing he wasn't single. I heard rumors that the in-laws also had to take on debt and now work tirelessly from morning to night alongside James.
"Mommy."
"What's the matter, Oliver?" On the other hand, we were living peacefully. We take turns looking after Oliver, enjoying our days with plenty of free time. And when I stand at the shop front, the regulars dote on me. Separating from James allowed us to find happiness.
"Let's play with Mama today."
At my words, Oliver beamed with an angelic smile. Some time later, our family grew. Liam's wife, Emily, came to live with us. Emily adores Oliver.
"I'm so happy to have this little guy as my nephew."
With Emily, I think we can build a happy home. Liam said this with a smile. If someone who is as kind as James chose Emily to be his partner, I'm sure everything will be fine. If there's ever a problem, next time, I'll be the one to help. Since then, there's been no contact from James and his family. Thanks to that, we've been able to enjoy a very peaceful life.
"All right, Mommy's going to do her best today, so you stay with Grandma, okay?"
From now on, the five of us will watch over Oliver's growth. And today, as always, I set out to make delicious bread with determination. Years later, our family grew even more. Liam and Emily got married and had a child. On top of that, someone who wanted to be with me appeared.
"If anyone tries to make Mommy cry, I'll protect her."
Oliver has also grown and now says things cute like that. Together with Oliver, I will continue to run the bakery.
"I'm sorry, but you can't make a withdrawal." "What?" "It seems there's only about $1 in your bank account." "Wait, there's got to be a mistake."
How did it come to this? I was trying to withdraw money from my bank account for my son, Mike's tuition fees. Then I received a call from the credit card company.
"Hello? We're seeing a charge of $30,000 here." "What?"
I exclaimed louder than before. Other customers in the vicinity turned to look, wondering what was going on.
"Ma'am? Can you give me a moment? I need to check something."
I had a suspicion. After hanging up, I called someone else.
"Did you use my credit card?"
"Yeah, about that. My parents wanted a new car, so I bought it for them in full." My husband Dylan, unapologetically laughing over the phone. All the savings for Mike's education.
"Do you even realize what that money was for?"
Come on, don't make such a fuss. It's not like it was for anything important. Hearing those words, something inside me broke.
"You better be responsible for your own words." "What?" "It's your fault for leaving your credit card around like that." "Don't joke. Even if it's for your parents, you can't just recklessly spend like that. You have no right to tell me that."
Realizing arguing was futile, I decided on a final course of action.
"Fine. Hey, wait a sec."
I hung up and immediately called the police. Dylan had to face the consequences. There was no way I could forgive him. I'm Emily. 45 years old, working in sales at a cosmetics company. My family consists of my husband Dylan and our 18-year-old son Mike. Our relationship started through work and evolved from there.
Emily, do you plan to get married in the future? What? Where has this come from?
I was just thinking, since you're so beautiful. If we're talking about looks, Dylan, you're quite handsome yourself. Oh, come on. We were both 26, thinking about marriage. Such conversations became frequent, and before we knew it, we were dating. A year later, we got married. Dylan wanted me to be a housewife after marriage, but I wanted to continue working.
Since I'm going to keep working, how about we just merge our bank accounts? That might get confusing. Let's keep them separate. Really?
Well, I'll be the breadwinner, paying rent and groceries. You can handle the savings.
Okay then.
Living together revealed aspects of Dylan I hadn't noticed before. Discussing it with friends, they said it's often the case, which somewhat reassured me. Things were going well after that, so I didn't say anything too strongly to Dylan. Things went on like this until Mike was born a year into our marriage.
We really need to cut back on unnecessary expenses now that we have a child.
I was on maternity leave and decided to talk to Dylan when he got back from work. I thought that if I talked to him, he would understand.
You think I'm wasting money? I should be able to spend as I like sometimes. Of course, but my worry is that you're overspending.
Ugh. Dylan sighed, looking annoyed. I was worried if we were okay, being this way so early in our marriage. But the problem didn't solve itself as time went by. And the issues weren't just with Dylan.
My parents are coming over to visit soon.
What?
Why didn't you tell me earlier? Sorry, I totally forgot.
This was just the beginning. I was constantly being put in difficult situations by Dylan and my in-laws. And then, the following Saturday, my in-laws arrived. Hello, Emily. Long time no see. Please come in. Don't mind if I do. At first glance, the parents-in-law seemed quite caring, and to others, there seemed to be no issues. However, perhaps more like a parent and child, they were lax about managing money.
How about we go shopping today, since it's a special occasion? Shopping?
Yes.
There's something I've been wanting for a long time.
But since Mike was in a bad mood and wouldn't stop crying no matter what, I ended up staying home.
All right, I'm counting on you to house sit.
With that, Dylan left with the parents-in-law. When they returned about 2 hours later, I was surprised to see them.
What's with all those bags in your hands? Oh, these? Yeah, I guess I bought too much.
Moreover, the bags were printed with logos of famous brands.
We're back. Sorry for making you house sit. Oh, no, it's okay.
Mother-in-law Rebecca was also carrying bags similar to Dylan's. Then, sitting on the sofa, she started spreading out her purchases as if to show them off to me. I didn't own that much myself. Moreover, since getting married, I've been trying to save money, keeping the future in mind.
Thank you for today. I can't believe you bought me so much.
It's nothing to worry about. It's just filial piety. Plus, I got a lot too. Watching this exchange was almost headache-inducing.
Oh, right. This is for Mike.
Saying this, Dylan pulled out a piece of baby clothing from a brand.
We had to make you house sit, after all.
Father-in-law Bert said with a laugh. I had hoped they might have bought something for me too, but there was nothing, and Dylan and his parents seemed satisfied looking at their own things. The day ended with a family dinner and we said goodbyes, but there was another chance to meet the in-laws at a family gathering. Welcome. Thank you for having us today. Even I, who wasn't much interested in brands, could tell Rebecca was dressed head to toe in brand name clothes. You always seem so plain. This was said while we were drinking coffee in the living room. From the moment she arrived, Rebecca had been looking at me, and this was why.
I've been meaning to say this, but you need to take care of your appearance more.
Then Dylan joined the conversation.
What are you talking about?
About Emily being plain. Oh, that.
Yeah, I've been meaning to say same.
The reason for my plain appearance was because I had more important things to worry about than my own looks. Dylan freely spent money, but I was the one covering the costs from our savings. He didn't realize that our current lifestyle was thanks to that. During my 2-day stay at my in-laws, I had to put up with Rebecca's sarcasm the whole entire time. And upon returning home, Dylan started it with my appearance again.
Like Mom said at home earlier, you should take more care of your appearance. It's embarrassing for me too.
Unable to bear it any longer, I vented all my pent-up frustrations.
If you're embarrassed, then think a bit more about how you spend money. I've been saying this for a long time. Are we going to have that talk again? I'm tired of hearing it. Tired of hearing it? With Mike growing older, are you planning to keep living like this? Life is going on just fine, isn't it?
Dylan laughed and headed to the bedroom. Life went on like this, and before we knew it, Mike had become a junior in high school. Then, one summer afternoon, Dylan came up to me.
I have something I want to discuss.
Dylan wanting to discuss something was a bad omen. And as expected, my fears were confirmed.
A discussion? Sort out your money issues yourself.
Haven't said anything yet, have I? Can you pay for some living expenses instead? Had Dylan not listened to me at all? I was so astounded I didn't want to talk anymore.
By the way, what are you short on? What I'm short on? Everything. Everything? It hasn't even been a week since payday. Just help me out, okay?
Dylan didn't seem to feel any remorse towards me. Reluctantly, I convinced myself it was necessary for our livelihood. This is the last time, okay?
Yeah.
Even though we were still talking, Dylan was looking at his mobile phone, seemingly bored. And that wasn't all.
I'm going out for a bit. Wait. Where are you going? Don't need to tell you. I'll be back by night.
And then Dylan left the house. I was left alone in the living room, stunned. Honestly, I've considered divorce more than once or twice. But I didn't because of Mike. While I was thinking about this, Mike came.
Huh? Where's Dad?
He just went out.
Maybe he's gone to buy something again? You think so too?
Whenever Dylan went out alone without saying where he was going, he invariably ended up buying unnecessary things. As I sighed, Mike made a suggestion.
Why don't you just let it go? What?
I've been watching all this time, and it's clearly too much.
But you're still here. I can't do something so irresponsible. That's why I'm saying, once I graduate from college, I'll leave this house to work. Then, Mom, you can be free to do what you want.
Thank you. For Mike, who had been watching Dylan's reckless behavior, it must have been too much to tolerate. Mike's words were a relief to me. He was my son and we were a team. Dylan returned before dinner, as expected, with luxury items. If there was money to buy such things, it should be used for living expenses. I was too tired to even complain to Dylan. No matter what I said, he wouldn't listen and would do as he pleased. Sometime after I had covered Dylan's expenses.
Here. What's this? This is to cover what you paid for me the other day.
Saying that, Dylan handed me an envelope. Inside, there was money. Oh, thank you. I hadn't expected him to repay me so soon. When I checked the amount, it was $1,000. It wasn't enough to cover what I paid, but I still felt a little happy. But that brief joy soon turned into a nightmare. All right, I'm taking this back.
Hey, what are you doing?
Dylan snatched the envelope back from me and put it in his pocket.
I did pay you back, right?
I'll need it for tomorrow.
I don't understand what you're doing.
I was confused about what was happening. While I was in panic, Dylan continued.
Why are you surprised?
Look. Then Dylan handed me the envelope again, only to take it back. He repeated this a few times.
So, now I've paid back everything I owe you.
I had no energy left to argue back. It was like a child's way of pretending everything was settled.
If that's what you think, I won't lend you money again. Why does it come to that? I paid you back, didn't I? Forget it.
From that day, I grew to dislike even talking to Dylan. Whenever he asked for something, it was always about money. Even more troublesome were the in-laws. I thought they had been quiet lately, but then suddenly they contacted me.
We haven't received this month's allowance. What? Allowance? I haven't heard anything about it. That can't be. Dylan said you would start paying from this month.
It's too sudden, I can't.
We're in trouble too. We have payments to make. It's your problem, so sort it out. I need it by the day after tomorrow. Wait a minute, Rebecca.
She said what she wanted to say and just hung up. I was constantly troubled by this family. Just thinking about it gave me a headache. That night, I asked Dylan what was going on.
Rebecca called, but what's this about an allowance? They seemed a bit troubled, so I've been sending them money for a while. But why should I pay? I haven't heard anything about it. Oh, did I forget to mention? And you even told Rebecca that I would be making the deposit. Then just send the allowance.
However, I decided not to send the allowance. Nor did I contact the in-laws, ignoring whatever they said. Mike's exams were approaching, and I couldn't afford to focus on such things. Time passed, and Mike got accepted to his first choice of college.
Congratulations! You've been working hard for this. The real challenge starts now. Say something to him. Well done.
That was the only thing Dylan said without even looking at Mike.
Wait a minute.
I tried to say something to Dylan, but Mike stopped me. I guess Mike didn't have much expectation from Dylan either. Then trouble came when I went to the bank to pay Mike's tuition. When my number was called and I approached the counter, an unexpected incident occurred.
I'm sorry, but you cannot make a withdrawal. What? It seems there is only $1 in your bank account. Wait, there's got to be a mistake.
How did it come to this? I was just trying to withdraw money from the bank account for Mike's tuition payment. Then, a call came from the credit card company.
Hello? We have noticed some unfamiliar usage on your credit card. Do you have any idea about this? That can't be right. It has to be a mistake. We have a record of the usage. There's a $30,000 charge on your account. What?
I exclaimed louder than before. Other customers in the bank turned to look at me.
Ma'am? Sorry, could you give me a moment? I need to check something. Understood.
I had one suspicion in mind. I hung up and called someone.
Where are you now?
At home. Why are you so panicky?
Did you use my credit card?
There was a brief silence. Yeah, that. My parents wanted a new car, so I bought it for them in one go. Dylan laughed over the phone, without any sign of remorse. All the money I had saved for Mike's education.
Do you even realize what that money was for?
Come on, don't make such a fuss. It couldn't have been for anything important. Hearing those words, something inside me crumbled.
You better be responsible for your own words. What? Responsible? It's your fault for leaving your credit card out. Don't joke around. Even if it's for your parents, do you realize how stupid this is? I don't need to be lectured by you.
I realized it was futile to argue with Dylan. I decided to take the final step.
Fine then. Hey, wait.
I hung up the phone immediately and then contacted the police. Dylan would have to face the consequences. No matter what, I couldn't forgive this. When I got back home, I confronted Dylan.
You better pay back every penny you used without permission.
Sorry, I'm a bit busy right now.
What?
Dylan was getting ready to leave.
I told you I bought a car, right? They're treating me to dinner today. Is this really the time for that? We're not done talking yet. Then we can talk when I get back.
I'll be late if I stay now. Ignoring my attempts to stop him, Dylan was about to leave when I told him about notifying the police.
I just called the police.
He stopped in his tracks.
What did you say? Did I hear something about the police? It's not your imagination. What the hell did you do? It's obvious, isn't it? You used my credit card without permission. Taking someone's money like that is theft. Your money is mine too. I just used it. And now you're calling the police. What are you thinking? Anyways, pay back the full amount. And make sure you apologize to Mike too. Apologize? Why? Mike has nothing to do with this.
I sighed. Using the money for his own desires was just unbelievable.
That money you used was saved for Mike's entrance fees and tuition. But thanks to you, we can't even pay that now. Why didn't you tell me sooner? How could I expect you to do something this foolish?
Then he started blaming me.
Not realizing someone used your credit card, aren't you the foolish one?
My anger was rising.
Also, you've always looked down on me, haven't you? That's you. Don't you see me as anything more than a wallet?
What?
You've become such a troublesome woman.
I was about to utter the word divorce when Mike, who had been out, returned.
What are you doing?
Mike.
Another fight?
Give it a rest. His words were not directed at me, but at Dylan.
What's up? You got a complaint against me too?
It's not a complaint, it's a warning. If you keep this up, you'll regret it eventually.
Regret? You've become quite bold in talking back to Dad, haven't you?
Dylan even started snapping at Mike. I regretted ever marrying such a person.
Oh, right, I almost forgot to tell you, I'm going on a trip in a week. How can you be so selfish? I thought about taking you guys along, but changed my mind. Just stay home and behave.
Dylan laughed at us mockingly and left to buy things for his trip. Left behind, we looked at each other. I'm sorry, Mike. Your tuition. So that's why you were fighting. Now I couldn't even send him to college. Even though it was Dylan's fault, I wouldn't have been surprised if Mike blamed me. But instead of blaming, Mike was concerned about me.
It's not your fault, Mom. Dad's the one to blame. And it's not like I can never go to college.
I felt grateful to Mike for saying that, but was also filled with guilt. I decided I had to get revenge on Dylan to the end.
I need your help with something. Of course. I'm on your side, Mom.
So, we planned our strategy before Dylan returned. And then, in the morning a week later.
See ya. I'll be back the day after tomorrow.
I didn't even respond. What's with you?
At least say something. Oh, and I paid for this trip with your credit card.
Dylan left in a good mood. I wasn't even surprised to hear that.
Is he gone? Gone. Shall we start then?
Yes, let's. We packed up everything except Dylan's belongings. During this week, we had found a place to move to. We decided to move on the day Dylan went on his trip.
We're finally done. It took quite some time. Just need to get the movers now.
Soon the movers came. We left a note in the room and headed to the new apartment. I also decided to cancel the lease on the current apartment. I was the one who had originally signed the lease. Thus, a new life with Mike began.
I wonder what he'll think when he gets back. He'll probably panic. But whatever happens, I don't care.
Serves him right. The day Dylan was supposed to return from his trip arrived. Sure enough, there was a barrage of calls from Dylan. Curious about his reaction, I answered the phone.
Emily! Where are you? I don't think I need to tell you that. Stop joking around. I think you're the one who's joking.
Did you check the table?
The divorce papers?
Yes, those.
My name is already on them. Fine. Then we'll get divorced.
With that, Dylan hung up. The next day, Dylan sent a photo of the signed divorce papers. I felt relieved, but still had things to do. I immediately contacted a lawyer to get back the money he had used without permission. About a month later.
What do you mean move out?
A panicked call from Dylan came early in the morning. It means just that. I signed the lease, after all.
I can do whatever I want with it, right? I can't just accept that. Come back here now.
That's impossible. We're divorced, remember? I thought it was time to say everything I wanted to Dylan.
Also, I'm getting the money you used back through my lawyer. You did what?
Yes. I don't need to hold back anymore. So, I'll do as I please.
Who do you think allowed you to live like this? I certainly don't think it was thanks to you.
Even over the phone, I could tell Dylan was furious. But his anger couldn't change the reality. Just get out of that house quickly. It's not yours anymore.
You'll regret this.
He hung up, but I wasn't bothered. In fact, I laughed out loud.
What happened?
Sorry. That was him just now.
And what did he say?
Of course, he was angry. Told me that I'd regret this. What's that supposed to mean?
It's funny, isn't it?
After that, Dylan, unable to do anything, had to leave the house. He truly got what he deserved. Apparently, Dylan moved back to his parents' house, but that was a mistake. Dylan's hell was far from over. The next day after Dylan contacted me, the lawyer informed me that we could formally recover the money. It looked like we could also claim compensation for all the trouble he had caused.
How dare you do this to us?
Huh? The call from Rebecca was full of complaints.
Thanks to you, we're in trouble. We can't make our payments now. How are you going to fix this?
That's unfortunate. But it's no longer my problem, and you'll have to resolve it on your end.
You should pay in my place since it's your fault. Absolutely not. If you had any gratitude for the help we gave you, you should repay that kindness. I don't feel I owe you anything, so I'm fine. Goodbye.
This time, I was the one to hang up. It was a truly liberating moment. This outcome should have been easy to predict. A family all lax about money was bound to collapse eventually. Blinded by immediate desires, they failed to see the reality of their situation.
We finally got our money back.
Yes, but we couldn't make the college payment in time.
It's okay. I'll try again next year.
Mike was incredibly positive. Seeing him like that lifted my spirits. Later, I heard that Dylan and his family, unable to pay their debts, filed for bankruptcy. They ended up losing their house and were left wandering with no assets. I don't even know where they live now. They filed for bankruptcy. Seems like it. It's their own responsibility.
Well, it's not our concern anymore.
Dylan was also interviewed by the police but was just questioned. The police couldn't intervene further. However, this incident reached his workplace, and Dylan was apparently fired. He'll probably regret this for the rest of his life. I'm determined to keep moving forward with Mike, working together as a team.